They called him the man with the golden touch, the self-made millionaire who turned every idea into profits. Matthew Harrington possessed everything a man could dream of: fame, fortune, and a dazzling trophy home. But beneath the polished exterior lay secrets: his pregnant wife, Olivia, and a hidden mistress, Sasha. One night, as the champagne popped and confetti rained, Matthew reveled in his success with Sasha at his side, never suspecting the person watching, heart-pounding, was his betrayed wife. What followed was a vortex of deceit, heartbreak, and scandal. This is the story you won't want to miss: the drama behind a millionaire's perfect facade. Matthew Harrington was born in a modest brownstone in Brooklyn, New York. His father was an insurance salesman who scraped by on commission checks while his mother worked part-time at the local diner. For most of his childhood, Matthew watched his parents struggle to make ends meet, pay the rent, keep food on the table. He would come home from school to find them hunched over the kitchen table, bills scattered around, whispering about how to push off the electric company for a few more days. He was determined to break free from that life. He often stared at Manhattan's gleaming skyscrapers across the river, imagining himself in one of those high rises, wearing a tailored suit, commanding the world of finance. By the time he was in high school, Matthew was already investing small amounts of money in penny stocks, rummaging for tips on obscure internet forums. He quickly discovered that he had a natural flair for spotting undervalued prospects, capitalizing on the euphoria or fear of the market, and turning a quick profit. After graduation, he enrolled at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. He couldn't afford Harvard, but Wharton was no small feat. There, he expanded his network, befriending children of the nation's wealthiest families. He interned at Goldman Sachs, starved himself of sleep to impress the bigwigs, and soon garnered a reputation for shrewdness that far exceeded his age. It didn't take long for the world to notice. After completing his MBA, Matthew hopped from one hedge fund to another, leaving a blaze of profitable trades in his wake. At just 29, he started his own private equity firm, Harrington Ventures, which rapidly rose to prominence. With success came unimaginable wealth. He bought a penthouse in Manhattan's Upper East Side, rubbed elbows with celebrities, and wore designer suits that fit like second skin. But if money was Matthew's first love, pride was his second. He relished in the accolades, living for the headlines that named him a financial prodigy. His drive to climb higher never ceased. It was only after he'd made his first $100 million that he turned to his personal life. At a charity gala in the Hamptons, he met Olivia Greenwood, a vibrant and intelligent marketing executive. She was the daughter of a respected judge, possessed a refined sense of grace, and carried herself with a subtlety that Matthew found refreshing. They courted for 2 years and eventually married in a lavish ceremony at the Plaza Hotel. Gossip columns ate it up. Photos of the newlyweds on the iconic marble staircase were splashed across tabloids and social media feeds. Everyone envied the power couple. Olivia was confident yet supportive, never overshadowing Matthew, but always offering a gentle guidance that cut through his sometimes blinding ambition. Friends whispered that if anyone could keep him grounded, it was Olivia. Yet behind the scenes, the pace of his business deals often overshadowed the marriage. Olivia craved closeness, quiet nights at home, the possibility of starting a family. Matthew, on the other hand, chased after the next big venture, the next rung on the ladder of success. He was away on business trips more often than not, returning with suitcases full of expensive gifts, but little in the way of real affection. Over time, cracks in their bond began to form. She tried to fix things through long phone calls and heartfelt texts, but distance only grew. It was during these months, when the flame in his marriage started sputtering, that Sasha Armand came into his life. She was a young fashion designer, an influencer with 1 million followers on Instagram, who exuded a kind of seductive confidence that made men and women alike turn to look. They first met at a runway show in Paris. Matthew was there finalizing an investment in a burgeoning fashion house. Sasha was seated front row, sashaying from after-party to after-party. She wasn't shy about her interest in him. Usually Matthew's wedding ring served as a shield against flirtations, but that night he felt vulnerable, subdued by the dimly lit Parisian ambiance and jazz music. Sasha's compliments, her unwavering gaze, and the gentle brush of her hand against his arm worked like a potent elixir. One glass of champagne led to another, culminating in a midnight rendezvous by the Seine River. It was a moment of weakness, a betrayal that would set the stage for cataclysmic events yet to come. Matthew told himself it was a one-time mistake, a fleeting spark while overseas. But Sasha was relentless. She texted him from every city she visited, sending him pictures in alluring dresses, accidentally hooking his interest further. With each new milestone or stressful business deal, Matthew found himself leaning on her brand of excitement, something that felt less complicated than Olivia's watchful eyes and quiet pleas for a normal life. Back home, Olivia was ecstatic one morning to discover she was pregnant. She had long wanted a child, imagining that would bring Matthew back to her. But as her happiness soared, she also sensed that something was off. Late-night calls from unknown numbers or suspicious text notifications flashed on Matthew's phone. He brushed them off as business emergencies or inconsequential acquaintances. Yet the pit in her stomach grew. She had no concrete evidence, just an overwhelming sense that her husband was slipping away. The tension simmered beneath the surface. Olivia was hesitant to confront him directly. She hoped that their baby would help repair the rift. Matthew, meanwhile, felt caught in a tangle of guilt, desire, and unstoppable ambition. So he poured his energies into a new venture, an ambitious global real estate fund that, if successful, would secure his name among the world's most prominent tycoons. It was precisely this new venture that became the catalyst for the celebration of a lifetime. Matthew planned a massive party at a swanky rooftop venue, the Conrad New York downtown, overlooking the Hudson River. Executives, celebrities, and socialites received gilded invitations, promising an unforgettable evening of champagne toasts and highbrow entertainment. Sasha was invited as a special guest under the guise of a business associate and friend. Olivia, just starting to show her pregnancy, was initially left in the dark. She found out about the party from a business magazine article that praised Matthew's upcoming success bash. The journalist asked about the rumored VIP list, which included the up-and-coming designer, Sasha Armand. With a sinking heart, Olivia confronted Matthew about the party. He feigned surprise. "Of course you're invited. I assumed you wouldn't want to be around so much noise in your condition." His eyes flickered with unease. Olivia wanted to believe it was genuine concern, but the mention of Sasha's name in the VIP list told her otherwise. With clenched teeth, she decided she would attend the party no matter what Matthew said. What followed would be a night that none of them would ever forget. In the weeks leading up to the event, Manhattan was abuzz with invitations, RSVPs, and speculation. The Conrad's rooftop was booked solid for 2 entire days, one for the setup, one for the party. A black and gold theme was chosen with gold confetti cannons to shoot glitter into the sky at midnight. The press was invited, ensuring that the pictures of Matthew's big night would be splattered across business columns and lifestyle sections the following day. The staff was briefed extensively. Special tables were assigned to high-profile guests. There would be a performance by a string quartet, followed by a surprise celebrity DJ that Sasha had recommended. A private VIP lounge was arranged for Matthew's closest circle, a small area protected by thick velvet curtains and guarded by 3 imposing security men in black suits. Olivia prepared her own dress, choosing a soft emerald green gown that accommodated her growing belly but showcased her natural grace. She visited her hairstylist, carefully selecting a subdued but elegant look that matched her sense of dignity. Though her heart felt like a swirling tempest, she maintained a calm facade. If I'm going to face whatever's behind this door, she thought I'm going to do it on my terms, looking like the confident partner I am. Meanwhile, Sasha reveled in her role. On Instagram, she flaunted a sneak peek of her shimmering gold dress, tailored by a famous designer. She posted cryptic captions hinting at a major announcement on the biggest night of my life. Her followers went into a frenzy, speculating whether she was launching a new fashion line or endorsing a global brand. Sasha indulged in the attention. She thrived on the knowledge that she was about to outshine all the other socialites at the party. Deep down, she found the secrecy thrilling, knowing that the night might catapult her own brand, especially if she was seen on the arm of Matthew Harrington. Matthew himself was a maelstrom of nerves and excitement. He had closed the final details of the real estate fund, securing billions in commitments from high-net-worth individuals, private equity groups, and even a quiet investment from the Rothschild family. Everything had to be perfect. He wanted to dazzle the press, impress the investors, and show the world that Matthew Harrington had reached a new pinnacle. In private guilt gnawed at him. He knew Sasha and Olivia would both be present. It was only a matter of time before their worlds collided, but a twisted sense of ego convinced him he could manage it all. He told himself that he was too smart, too experienced to let things spiral out of control. He had handled bigger crises at the negotiating table. Surely he could juggle the woman who gave him stability and the woman who gave him excitement. Or so he believed. The evening started innocently enough. Dignitaries, celebrities, and Manhattan's elite began trickling into the Conrad's foyer at sunset. Photographers lined the red carpet, calling out names and capturing glitzy arrivals. Olivia arrived earlier than Matthew. She smiled graciously, ignoring prying questions about her baby bump. The swirling cameras and microphone booms made her uneasy, but she maintained composure with a practiced grace. Inside, she found a quiet corner by a bar, sipping on sparkling water, waiting for the main event. An hour later, Matthew made his grand entrance. Escorted by 2 of his closest associates, James Krieger and Nelson Lee, he wore a midnight blue tuxedo and a confident smile. Cheers erupted from the crowd. He shook hands, posed for pictures, answered a few rapid-fire questions about his new fund. People admired the young maestro of high finance, a man who made wealth seem so effortless. Only a keen observer would notice his occasional glances around the room, searching for both Olivia and Sasha. Eventually, he spotted Olivia near the bar. Her emerald gown caught the light, revealing the gentle curve of her pregnancy. For a moment, he felt a pang of something regret, maybe. He approached her carefully, offering a mechanical kiss on the cheek. "Everything all right?" he asked. "I'm fine," she responded, her gaze cool, yet tinged with sadness. "Congratulations on the fund. It's quite an achievement." He forced a smile, uneasy, with the tension simmering between them. She excused herself shortly thereafter, leaving him alone in the bustle of clinking glasses and lively chatter. Sasha arrived fashionably late, exactly as planned. A crescendo of camera flashes greeted her as she stepped out of her limousine. Her golden dress hugged her figure, the slit high enough to raise eyebrows. She paused on the carpet, letting the paparazzi get their fill before sauntering into the lobby. Inside, she made a grand show of embracing Matthew in full view of the guests. People assumed it was a friendly greeting, but anyone watching closely could sense an intimacy that went beyond casual acquaintance. "Congratulations on everything," Sasha purred, pressing close. She smelled of expensive perfume notes of vanilla and amber. "Thank you for coming," Matthew replied, his voice low, conscious of the stares around them. "We need to talk." She whispered, her hand lingering on his shoulder a moment too long. In private, he nodded later. Olivia watched this exchange from a distance, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. She recognized the intensity of that touch, the hidden current behind their eyes. Any lingering doubt she might have harbored vanished. The truth stood before her, undeniable and excruciating. As the party reached its zenith with champagne flowing and the live band playing show tunes, Olivia slipped into the background. She walked along the perimeter of the rooftop, occasionally stopping at small clusters of guests, smiling politely, but mostly lost in her own thoughts. The cold night air clung to her skin, but she barely noticed. She needed a moment of clarity. The truth about Matthew and Sasha weighed on her like a leaden blanket. One of Olivia's old friends from college, Charlene DeWitt, approached, noting her preoccupation. "Liv, are you okay?" Charlene asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "I just need some fresh air," Olivia answered softly, forcing a half-smile. Charlene glanced over Olivia's shoulder, spotted Sasha laughing with a group of stylists, and quickly pieced together the scenario. Rumors had been swirling for months. Softly, Charlene touched Olivia's arm and whispered, "I'm here if you need me." "Thank you," Olivia replied, tears threatening to surface. She swallowed them back, determined not to break down in public. Meanwhile, Matthew escorted Sasha to the private VIP lounge. Thick curtains shielded them from prying eyes, but a handful of A-list investors and celebrities mingled inside. He introduced Sasha around, always emphasizing their professional collaboration in the fashion industry. She played the part, graciously shaking hands, making small talk about her upcoming line. Beneath the veneer, her fingertips grazed Matthew's arm in subtle acts of possession. Eventually they found a quieter corner next to an ornate floor lamp. Sasha glanced around, ensuring no one stood within earshot. "I missed you," she whispered, her eyes dark with longing. "Sasha, we can't do this here," Matthew responded, scanning the room. "Let's go somewhere else," then she insisted. Her voice carried a hint of defiance, as if daring him to deny her. "Just give me a few minutes to make my rounds. We'll meet on the balcony upstairs," he said, referencing a smaller, more secluded terrace. "Don't keep me waiting." She smiled, and with that she sauntered away, hips swaying in the golden dress. Unbeknownst to either of them, Olivia had quietly slipped into the lounge a few moments earlier, taking a seat behind a wide pillar. She overheard their exchange with growing dread and fury. Her worst fears were confirmed. Matthew and Sasha were romantically involved. She felt her stomach churn, worried about her unborn child. The ground felt unsteady, her life unraveling in plain sight. But a fire ignited in her eyes. She refused to let their betrayal go unchallenged. Steeling herself, Olivia decided to follow them and catch them red-handed, if that's what it took. She had to know the full extent of this affair. A short while later, Sasha stood on the small balcony that jutted out from the rooftop's north side. It was meant for staff breaks and emergency exits, not for lavish partying. The city lights sprawled in every direction, shimmering like 1,000 silent witnesses. The wind whipped around the building, tugging at Sasha's hair, sending a thrill through her at the prospect of what was about to happen. Matthew arrived, carefully closing the door behind him. He'd ducked away from a conversation with a prominent venture capitalist, feigning a phone call. As soon as he turned toward Sasha, she looped her arms around his neck and planted a kiss on his lips, bold, reckless, but oh so intoxicating. "Sasha, please," he warned, though. He barely pulled away. She sighed. "We never get a moment alone. Your wife." "Don't bring her up," Matthew cut in, a flicker of guilt and anger crossing his face. "She's pregnant. It's complicated." Sasha's eyes narrowed. "And what about me? Am I just someone you keep on the sidelines?" "It's not that simple. Make it simple," she demanded, her voice tinged with frustration. "Tell me this isn't just a fling. Tell me you have actual plans for us." Matthew exhaled sharply. He thought about his unborn child, about the scandal that would erupt if this affair went public, about the love he once felt for Olivia. But the magnetic pull of Sasha made him weak. Before he could respond, a faint click of the door handle startled them. They turned to see Olivia standing there, the golden glow of the hallway lights silhouetting her figure. Her gaze was fixed on them, full of heartbreak and fury. Sasha stepped back, letting her arms fall away from Matthew. Time seemed to slow. The hum of the city below suddenly became deafening. For a moment, no one spoke. A silent trifecta of heartbreak, betrayal, and guilt hung in the cold night air. Then, Olivia finally broke the stillness. "So this is what you've been hiding," she said, her voice trembling, yet laced with steely resolve. "I suspected. But seeing it, it's different." Matthew struggled for words. "Olivia, this isn't what it looks like. It was a pathetic lie, and even he knew it." Sasha bristled at his words, not liking how he tried to downplay the moment. She lifted her chin defiantly, as if to say, "Yes, it is exactly what it looks like." Olivia ignored Sasha's expression and locked eyes with Matthew. "You have the nerve to celebrate your success while making a mockery of our marriage, and with me carrying your child." In that moment, Sasha stepped forward, her voice carefully measured. "Olivia, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But Matthew and I don't speak to me." Olivia snapped, eyes blazing. She turned to Matthew, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "You know what this is going to do to us? To our family." Matthew's face went pale. He reached out to her, but she recoiled. The swirl of guilt, shock, and shame contorted his expression. "I never meant," he began, but words failed him. Olivia closed her eyes, steadied herself. "Matthew, I'm leaving this party. You can do as you please, but I won't stand here and watch you flaunt this affair in front of the whole city. I deserve better. Our child deserves better." Tears shimmering in her eyes, Olivia turned and left, letting the heavy door slam behind her. Sasha and Matthew stood in stunned silence. Outside, the city roared on, indifferent to the heartbreak unraveling above. Olivia walked briskly through the crowd, determined not to let anyone see her tears. The bright smiles, the clinking of glasses, the boisterous laughter, everything felt like a cruel tableau. Spotting Charlene by the main doors, Olivia tugged at her friend's arm. "I need to leave," Olivia whispered. Charlene saw the tears welling up, recognized the brokenness in her friend's voice. She didn't ask any questions. "Come on, my car's out front," she said gently. They made their way down the elevator and into the street. The paparazzi outside were too distracted by a minor celebrity's arrival to pay Olivia much attention. Charlene's driver opened the door, and Olivia slid into the back seat, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Charlene climbed in beside her, instructing the driver to take them to Olivia's penthouse. Once inside the car, Olivia let go. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She clutched her stomach, protective of the life growing inside her, even as her own life felt like it was shattering. "Charlene," she whispered. "He's with her Sasha." I saw them. Charlene reached out, holding Olivia's trembling hand. I had my suspicions, she admitted, her tone laced with sympathy. But I prayed it wasn't true. "Olivia, I'm so sorry." Olivia bowed her head. silent sobs racking her shoulders. She had tried so hard to maintain the dignity of her marriage, never imagining the ultimate betrayal would unfold in such a public, humiliating manner. Now she felt an avalanche of despair, crashing down, swirling with rage and heartbreak. Back at the rooftop, Matthew stood rooted in place for an agonizing minute, while Sasha stared at him in disbelief. "We'll go after her," she said, half taunting, half fearing the repercussions. Matthew shook his head, burying his face in his hands for a moment. He wanted to chase after Olivia to explain or apologize. Yet he also felt the pull of Sasha's presence, twisted logic, telling him it was too late to salvage the moment. Instead, he re-entered the lounge, picking up a half-finished glass of champagne that someone had left behind, downing it in one gulp. A wave of shame washed over him as he realized the magnitude of what had just happened. News of Olivia's abrupt departure quickly filtered through the party, though most guests weren't sure why. Some speculated she felt ill from the pregnancy. Others wondered if a sudden business call required her. But a few sharp-eyed onlookers, including a couple of gossip bloggers, sensed something more salacious afoot. Sasha, brimming with arrogance, and emboldened by the confrontation's outcome, made no attempt to hide her closeness to Matthew for the rest of the night. She clung to his side, the photographer's cameras, capturing every moment. Meanwhile, journalists from outlets like Business Insider and Vanity Fair smelled a story. Even if they didn't know the specifics, they saw enough to suspect drama. The tension, the hush among certain circles, the distressed look on Matthew's face. The night that was supposed to celebrate his greatest professional triumph now stood on the brink of scandal. By early morning, a storm of speculation hit social media. Photos leaked of Sasha, leaning in close to Matthew, the half-hug, half-kiss images. Shots of Olivia looking distraught as she hurried off the premises. Twitter threads and Instagram stories buzzed with rumors that the golden couple, Matthew and Olivia Harrington, were on the rocks, possibly due to a third party. Sasha's name trended briefly, adding to her influencer fame, though many criticized her as a home-wrecker. In the penthouse, Olivia lay curled up in bed, tears long since dried. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her, but sleep had been elusive. She spent the night replaying the balcony scene, that final look in Matthew's eyes, the hush of the city winds. Every time she drifted off, nightmares jarred her awake visions of her child, asking why Daddy was never around, or the baby turning into a hollow-eyed figure that vanished whenever Matthew appeared. Charlene had stayed by her side, refusing to leave, until Olivia showed any semblance of stability. She made tea, fetched a warm blanket, even tried calling Matthew's phone to berate him, but it went straight to voicemail. "You need to see a doctor today," Liv Charlene insisted, her concern mounting for Olivia's physical health amidst the emotional trauma. By mid-morning, Olivia agreed. She showered dressed in loose clothing and took a car to see her obstetrician. She wanted to ensure her baby remained unharmed by the night's severe stress. In the waiting room, she glanced at the glossy magazines featuring Matthew on the covers, praising his business acumen. Her stomach churned at the sight. She turned them face down, unable to bear the irony. When her name was called, Olivia mustered a thin smile for the nurse. An ultrasound confirmed that the baby's heartbeat was strong. The doctor advised rest, no strenuous activities, and encouraged mental well-being. "Stress can take a toll," the doctor warned gently. "Lean on those who can support you." "Yes, thank you, Olivia," whispered, tears stinging her eyes. At least the baby was fine. That was the one good piece of news. Elsewhere in the city, Matthew woke up in a suite at the Four Seasons, having spent the night in solitude after leaving Sasha's side. He'd needed space, or so he claimed, though Sasha had tried to accompany him. 1,000 missed calls and text messages, cluttered his phone, some from business associates, others from reporters fishing for a statement, and a few from his own mother, Harriet Harrington, who had seen the headlines and demanded an explanation. He sat by the window half-dressed, reading the morning's articles. The tabloids were in a feeding frenzy, presenting half-truths and speculation. One blog claimed the Harrington marriage had been crumbling for months. Another alleged Sasha was pregnant too, an outright fabrication as far as Matthew knew. The scandal overshadowed his triumphant business deal, tarnishing what should have been the highlight of his career. Guilt and panic churned in his gut. He had gambled his marriage, his dignity, and possibly his future relationship with his child. What if Olivia left him for good? What if the investors lost confidence in his leadership, due to the moral failings laid bare in the cutthroat world of high finance? Personal scandals often spelled doom. Against this backdrop of chaos, Sasha called. He debated ignoring her, but he knew she'd be relentless. "Matthew, are you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern and a hint of exasperation. "No, I'm not," he responded bluntly, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Everything is spiraling," she sighed. "Look, we'll weather this. The media loves drama, but in a week they'll move on to something else." "What about Olivia?" Sasha hesitated. "Well, you'll handle that part, however you see fit. But you and I, we have something special. I'm not letting go." Matthew grimaced. He wanted to argue, but the truth was he couldn't even define what he had with Sasha. He was a coward, floating between two worlds, unable to choose. "I need time," he finally said. "I need to talk to my wife." Later that day, Matthew mustered the courage to return to his penthouse, half expecting Olivia to have changed the locks. He stopped briefly in the lobby, ignoring the curious stares from residents and staff who had likely seen the news. Upon reaching his private floor, he used his key to enter. The place was eerily quiet. He found Olivia in the sunlit living room, perched on a sofa, a single suitcase by her side. Her face was pale but resolute. "Are you leaving?" he asked, his voice hollow. "I don't know," she replied, arms folded protectively over her midsection. "I packed this in case I decided I couldn't stay here tonight." Charlene offered me a room. Matthew walked over and sank into an armchair across from her. He tried to form words of apology, but nothing felt sufficient. Finally he breathed, "I'm sorry. I messed up." Olivia's eyes flashed. "Messed up is an understatement. You humiliated me, Matthew. You paraded around with her while I was carrying your child. I never wanted to hurt you," he pleaded, voice cracking under the weight of remorse. Olivia inhaled deeply, tears threatening to spill. "What do you want from me now? You want me to stand by your side, smiling for the cameras while you continue this affair?" "No," Matthew said, his eyes brimming. I want to make this right. I want my family." Olivia shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You should have thought of that before." Silence swallowed the space between them. The clock on the wall ticked ominously. "You realize trust is broken, right?" Olivia said. "I can't just forget what I saw." "I know," he admitted. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll cut off contact with Sasha." Olivia's gaze hardened. "Will you?" For a moment, Matthew hesitated, haunted by the memory of Sasha's allure. But then he saw Olivia's trembling shoulders, the tears glistening in her eyes, and felt an overwhelming sense of shame. "Yes," he said, though he sounded uncertain even to himself. Olivia pursed her lips, nodding slowly. "We'll need counseling. And I won't just pretend things are fine. This is going to be a long road, Matthew, and I'm not sure I can promise forgiveness. But for now, I'll stay. Because I want our child to have a chance at a normal life. But if you betray me again, You won't have to say it, Matthew interrupted. I understand. Olivia stood up, picking up her suitcase. Without another word, she moved down the hallway to the master bedroom. For now it seemed they had reached a fragile truce, a momentary standstill, in a war that had only begun to rage. In the following days, Matthew immersed himself in damage control. He gave a carefully worded statement to the press, claiming deep love and respect for my wife, and hinting that rumors of an affair were baseless. His PR team worked overtime, threatening tabloids with lawsuits, attempting to bury salacious headlines beneath press releases, lauding Harrington Ventures' new philanthropic endeavors. Sasha, however, was less cooperative. She posted cryptic Instagram stories about trusting the universe and never settling for less than you deserve. She uploaded a series of stunning selfies wearing outfits reminiscent of the party night fueling speculation that she was making a statement directed at Matthew or Olivia. Publications picked up on her cryptic notes and spun new angles. Is Sasha Armand the mistress behind the Harrington meltdown? At home, Olivia tried to maintain a sense of routine. She rose early, took prenatal vitamins, went to yoga classes for expectant mothers. She avoided social gatherings, aware that eyes would be on her, that whispers would follow. She felt relieved that her father, the judge, lived abroad most of the year. The scandal hadn't fully reached his ears yet. Her mother passed away years ago, was no longer around to see this heartbreak. Matthew, for his part, complied with Olivia's demands. He blocked Sasha's number, though she found ways to slip messages through. He changed his schedules to minimize travel. He asked Olivia to join him for dinner. Each night tried to reconnect by discussing baby names and future plans. But each time she looked at him, she saw the image of him embracing Sasha, the cold rooftop scene replaying in her mind. In therapy sessions, recommended by Olivia's close friend, who was a psychologist, they gingerly unpacked their emotions. The therapist, Dr. Morgan Beck, approached the situation methodically, letting each speak without interruption. Matthew admitted his ego, and restlessness led him astray. Olivia vented her anger, her profound sense of betrayal. Often the sessions ended with tears and a quiet ride home. Yet behind the scenes, Sasha was orchestrating her own plan. She felt betrayed by Matthew's withdrawal. He said he cared, but now he's ghosting me. She fumed to her assistant one day. She saw the possibility of using the scandal to propel herself further into the limelight. If Matthew wouldn't choose her, she would make sure the world knew she was the one who had the power to shake him. One morning, when the tabloids seemed to be moving on to new prey, some Hollywood divorce, perhaps Sasha struck. She granted an exclusive interview to a well-known gossip magazine, Celebrity Confidential. The article's teaser read like a landmine: I was in love with a billionaire. He used me, then tossed me aside like I was nothing. When the piece went live, it exploded across social media. Sasha detailed how she and Matthew allegedly carried on a months-long romance, how he showered her with gifts, promised her trips, made vows about a future together. She stopped short of giving explicit details, but the insinuations were strong. She even mentioned that Olivia was pregnant, framing it as an unfortunate complication that Matthew refused to address. Public sympathy swung wildly, with some condemning Sasha for pursuing a married man, while others bashed Matthew for his brazen infidelity. Investors called Matthew in a panic, worried that the negative press might tarnish the brand. Even his board members demanded an emergency meeting to address the potential fallout. At home, the news landed like a sledgehammer. Olivia found the article first, texted the link to Matthew, who was in a meeting downtown. She typed just one message. What else is she going to reveal? Matthew cut short his meeting, rushing home to find Olivia trembling with rage. She's painting herself as the victim. And the worst part is There's enough truth in her words that nobody will believe your denials, Olivia said, voice icy. Matthew ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. I'll sue her for defamation. She didn't mention anything that can't be corroborated, Olivia shot back. Any lawsuit you file might just give her more attention. For a brief moment, Olivia almost felt sorry for him. He looked haggard, as though he hadn't slept in days. But the memory of his betrayal was still too raw. Instead, she turned away, holding her stomach. The baby kicked as if sensing the tension. The fallout continued the next day. Reporters camped outside Harrington Ventures. Photographers lurked near the penthouse. Olivia had to slip out through a service entrance just to attend her next doctor's appointment without harassment. In therapy, she admitted to Dr. Beck that she doubted the possibility of repairing her marriage amid the circus. I can't imagine bringing a child into this storm, she said, tears falling. While the scandal brewed, Matthew's real estate fund faced mounting turbulence. Several major investors grew skittish, worried that his personal issues signaled a lack of discipline or stability. James Krieger, his longtime friend and colleague, tried to hold the line, assuring them that Harrington Ventures remained strong, but confidence was wavering. During a tense board meeting, one of the senior directors, a veteran named Adrian Lockwood, confronted Matthew. We respect your brilliance as an investor, Adrian began, adjusting his glasses, but personal conduct matters. We can't afford to have a meltdown that tarnishes the entire brand. Matthew clenched his jaw. I understand, Adrian. I'm working to resolve the situation. The best step forward is to show a united front with my wife and to silence any further interviews from Sasha. Can you guarantee that? Asked one of the other board members skeptically. I'll do everything in my power, Matthew declared. In the corridor afterward, James caught up with Matthew. What's your next move? Sasha won't just shut up because you asked nicely. Matthew exhaled. I might have to pay her off, a settlement or something to keep her quiet. James raised an eyebrow. That's risky. If it leaks, it could look like hush money. Matthew shrugged, desperation etched across his features. I'm out of options. My marriage is on the brink, and the firm is suffering. If a payout can end this nightmare, so be it. Through an intermediary, Matthew arranged a discreet meeting with Sasha at a private room in the Carlisle Hotel. Ironically, it was the same chain where he had once met her for secret rendezvous. Now the same setting felt grim and suffocating. Sasha arrived swathed in a black trench coat, oversized sunglasses perched on her head. The moment she spotted Matthew, a smirk curved her lips. Back to see me, are you? She teased, tone dripping with sarcasm. Matthew gestured for her to sit. Thank you for coming. I want to propose something that benefits both of us. She laughed, crossing her legs. Oh, now it's about mutual benefit. He slid a sealed envelope across the table. There's a check in there. A significant amount. In exchange, you'll sign this confidentiality agreement. No more interviews, no more posts insinuating details about our relationship. She picked up the envelope, weighing it in her hands. A flicker of greed shone in her eyes. Then she looked up. How much do you think my silence is worth? Open it. You'll see. Sasha tore open the envelope, examined the number eyes, widening momentarily. Then her gaze flicked to Matthew, calculating. It's generous, she admitted. But is it enough? Matthew stiffened, anger surfacing. I'm not here to negotiate with you. That's the offer. Take it or leave it. Sasha placed the check down, drumming her fingers on the table. You once made me feel I was priceless, Matthew. And now you want to put a price on me. On my silence. He forced a calm he didn't feel. We both know we can't continue like this. You're damaging my marriage, my business. She narrowed her eyes. What about my heart, Matthew? He inhaled briefly, closing his eyes. "I'm sorry if I led you on, but I'm trying to save my family." For a moment, she looked genuinely wounded. Then her features hardened. She picked up a pen from her purse. "Fine, I'll sign. But don't expect me to vanish into thin air. I have my own life to live, and if people ask questions, I won't lie." She scribbled her signature on the NDA, placed the check inside her coat pocket, and stood. Leaning forward, she whispered, "I hope you realize that one day your guilt is going to eat you alive." Then she turned and strode out, leaving behind the faintest trace of her perfume. Matthew exhaled relief, colliding with shame. He had effectively bought Sasha's silence, but at what cost to his own integrity? After the hush agreement was in place, the tabloid storm began to dissipate. Sasha refused further interviews, and her cryptic posts became more benign photos of beach vacations, new fashion designs, quotes about empowerment. The paparazzi found new targets. Harrington Ventures stabilized as key investors decided to ride out the scandal. In the weeks that followed, Matthew tried to mend things at home. He accompanied Olivia to her prenatal checkups. He rubbed her feet after long days. He even cooked dinner, albeit poorly on random nights, proclaiming it his new hobby. Olivia appreciated the efforts, but the emotional distance still felt vast. One evening, lying in bed, Matthew brought up the future. "Should we consider names for the baby?" Olivia turned to face him, arms folded over her growing belly. "I've thought about a few," she admitted, "but I'm not ready to finalize anything. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet." Matthew reached over, gently resting a hand on her stomach, feeling the baby kick. "I'm sorry, Olivia. Every day I wake up knowing how badly I messed up." She nodded, lips quivering. "I'm trying too. But it's like I see Sasha's face every time I look at you. It'll take time." He nodded, accepting the truth in her words. They lay there in the dimly lit room, the only sound the soft hum of the city outside. He wondered if they'd ever truly heal, or if this was just a lull before the storm would rage again. As her pregnancy progressed, Olivia's health required more rest. One night she experienced sharp pains and was rushed to the hospital. Terrified, Matthew dropped everything to be by her side, trembling as he waited in the corridor. Thankfully, the doctors were able to stabilize her. "Excessive stress," the obstetrician warned. "You need to keep her calm." Matthew realized with renewed urgency that any further upheaval could jeopardize both Olivia and the baby. He promised himself he would never contact Sasha again, no matter how strong the temptation or how lonely he felt. And for a while, it seemed to work. Olivia, relieved by Matthew's devotion, started to open up small incremental steps toward trusting him again. Then one fateful afternoon, an email arrived in Olivia's inbox. There was no subject line, just an attachment labeled Matthew's secret. Heart pounding, she opened it. Inside were a series of photos of Matthew and Sasha from their time in Paris, sitting at a cafe, entering a hotel, and one particularly damning shot of them holding hands along the Seine. A note accompanied the images. "You deserve to know everything your husband has been doing. Sincerely, a friend." Olivia's hands shook, tears spilling over. She had known about the affair, but seeing these intimate moments from months ago felt like another betrayal. She realized the affair had been going on for far longer than she'd initially thought, or at the very least, it had been more serious than just a fling at the rooftop. She confronted Matthew that same evening, thrusting the printouts in front of him. "What is this?" she demanded, voice quivering with rage. He stared, guilt flooding his features anew. "Olivia, that was from the beginning. It was before I realized how wrong it was." She laughed bitterly, tears in her eyes. So you're admitting you carried on with her multiple times in multiple cities while lying to my face? Matthew tried to explain to downplay the timeline, but each word only stoked Olivia's anger. She shouted, "I can't do this anymore, Matthew. Maybe we made a mistake thinking we could fix this." That night, Olivia locked herself in the guest room. She ignored his pleas, refused to open the door. He could hear her crying, the muffled sobs breaking what was left of his heart. Guilt and self-loathing consumed him. The next morning, she was gone. A note on the kitchen table read, "I'm at Charlene's. Don't follow me." Days turned into weeks without contact. Olivia cut him off, entirely ignoring calls, texts, even a letter he tried to send. She visited her lawyers discussing options for separation, possibly divorce. The only reason she hesitated to file immediately was the baby she wanted a stable environment before making final decisions. Matthew spiraled. He lost focus at work, snapping at colleagues and stumbling through investor meetings. James Krieger stepped in, temporarily taking the lead on critical deals. Whispers circulated around Harrington. Ventures had their genius founder lost his edge. In a last-ditch effort, Matthew reached out to Harriet Harrington, his mother who lived in Connecticut. She was a fiercely protective woman, quick to scold him for his transgressions. "You've made your bed," Harriet said sternly over the phone, "and now you must lie in it. But I'll try to speak with Olivia. She needs to know you come from a family that believes in making amends, not running away." Harriet visited Olivia at Charlene's apartment unannounced. Charlene opened the door uncertain, but upon seeing Harriet's sincere expression, she let her inside. Olivia, surprised, greeted her mother-in-law awkwardly. They sat in the living room with Charlene in the background, ready to intervene if tensions rose. Harriet held Olivia's hand gently. "I'm sorry for what my son has done. It's inexcusable." Olivia's eyes watered. She nodded, letting Harriet continue. "You have every right to leave him," Harriet said, not mincing words. "But I know from my own experience, marriage is complicated. I once wanted to leave Matthew's father when he hurt me. But ultimately we worked things out. That was my choice. Only you can decide what's right for you." Olivia listened, caught off guard by Harriet's genuine empathy. Harriet continued, "If you do decide to give him another chance, know that I'll be here to support you. And if you decide to leave, I'll still be there. But please let Matthew be part of the child's life." Olivia broke down, sobbing into Harriet's shoulder, releasing weeks of pent-up anguish. Harriet comforted her, rubbing her back. "He's a fool, my dear. A fool who might spend the rest of his life regretting this if you decide he's beyond redemption." In the following days, Harriet facilitated a mediated conversation between Matthew and Olivia. They met at Harriet's quaint lake house in Connecticut, away from the city's prying eyes. Surrounded by nature's quiet calm, they sat on opposite sofas in the living room, Harriet and Charlene, standing by as moral supports. Matthew confessed again, detailing his affair timeline, owning his lies, promising that he was done with Sasha. Olivia asked him point-blank if he still had feelings for Sasha. He hesitated, but then said, "What I had with her was excitement, a thrill, but it was hollow compared to what we have." Olivia stared at him, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "And if you felt that excitement again, you wouldn't go looking for it." Somewhere else, Matthew met her gaze. "I'll never put you and our child through this again." I know those words sound empty right now, but I mean it with every part of me. Finally, Olivia took a shaky breath. "We can't just snap back to normal. But for the baby's sake, and for the love I still have for you, I'll give us one more chance." Matthew exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He moved to her side, slowly reaching for her hand. She let him hold it, albeit tentatively. They had a long road of healing ahead, but this was a start. Over the next few months, as Olivia entered her 3rd trimester, they carefully worked on their marriage. Matthew ceased all contact with Sasha, blocked her on every platform. He publicly reaffirmed his commitment to Olivia, posting a heartfelt Instagram message about family and second chances. They sold the penthouse, a symbolic act of moving away from the site of betrayal, and bought a townhouse closer to Harriet's place in Connecticut. The fresh environment helped them chart a new course, free from the ghosts of old memories. Harrington Ventures stabilized. The real estate fund continued to expand, though Matthew delegated more responsibilities to James, prioritizing time with Olivia. He attended counseling sessions regularly, even alone, acknowledging that he had to confront his own demons of insecurity and ego. Olivia, meanwhile, focused on preparing for the baby's arrival. She decorated a nursery in soft shades of yellow and grey, refusing to learn the baby's sex beforehand. "I want something to look forward to, in a pure, unspoiled way," she told Matthew, who agreed wholeheartedly. Though they had their share of conflicts, Olivia's triggers remained sensitive. Especially if Matthew came home late overall, the couple slowly rediscovered a semblance of mutual trust. At times, Olivia even allowed Matthew to cradle her belly and feel the baby's every kick, a tender intimacy that reminded them both of the precious bond they shared. One cool evening, as autumn leaves blew past their windows, Olivia felt the first contractions. Matthew drove her to the hospital, hands trembling on the steering wheel, heart pounding with nervous anticipation. After hours of labor, filled with moments of pain, tears and hope, their baby girl came into the world. Matthew stood beside Olivia, tears streaming down his face as the newborn's cries filled the room. The doctor placed the tiny infant in Olivia's arms. She looked up at Matthew, their gazes locked in a mix of awe, relief, and love. "She's perfect, Olivia," whispered, brushing her lips across the baby's forehead. In that instant, all the turmoil, the betrayal, the heartbreak took a back seat to the miracle of life they had created. Matthew gently touched his daughter's hand, her tiny fingers curling around his. "We did it," he murmured, voice choked with emotion. Later they named her Aurora Grace Harrington, symbolizing a new dawn, a fresh start. As they cradled her in the hospital bed, the tension that had once threatened to tear them apart seemed a distant nightmare. They weren't naive. They knew plenty of challenges lay ahead. But for now they were a family, united by the innocent life in their arms. 6 months after Aurora's birth, life had settled into a new rhythm. The tabloids had long since moved on to different scandals. Sasha Armand vanished from the Harringtons' day-to-day reality, rumored to be dating a European art dealer. Harrington Ventures soared to record profits. Matthew spent more time at home, delighting in each milestone, Aurora's first laugh, the way she gripped his finger, her gradual attempts at rolling over. Olivia gradually forgave, though she would never forget. They continued therapy, acknowledging that trust needed consistent effort. Some nights after Aurora fell asleep, Matthew and Olivia would watch old home videos from their wedding or early married life, bittersweet reminders of what they once had and what they were now striving to reclaim. They promised each other that if conflict arose, they would talk it out instead of letting resentment fester. In the quiet hush of dawn, Matthew often woke to feed Aurora or change her diaper, letting Olivia rest. He'd hold his tiny daughter, her eyes curious and bright, whispering silent vows to be better, to be worthy of the love he almost lost. The journey to redemption was far from finished, but with each sunrise, he was grateful for the chance to be a father, a husband, and hopefully a better man. A single moment of betrayal almost destroyed Matthew Harrington's life. He learned the hard way that fame and fortune mean little when trust is lost, especially with the people who matter most. Through grueling therapy, unwavering resolve, and a newborn's pure love, Matthew and Olivia found a fragile yet hopeful path forward, determined to protect their marriage and provide their daughter Aurora with a loving home. Their story reminds us that no relationship is too big to fail nor too broken to heal if both parties are truly committed to change. But as Matthew discovered, the real test of redemption lies in daily actions, not grand gestures. He was the dashing mogul every ambitious entrepreneur wanted to emulate. She was the poised, loyal wife who had stood by him from humble beginnings. No one would have guessed that behind the gated mansion's manicured lawns, betrayal festered like poison. Until one day, in a flurry of financial sabotage, he let his mistress cut off his wife's credit cards. It was humiliating, scandalous, and only the beginning of a whirlwind that would pit powerful business alliances against each other. In a boardroom confrontation that stunned everyone, the CEO himself stepped in, but not in the way anyone expected. Buckle up. This is the story of love, greed, and revenge. Jordan Alberts was not born into luxury. He grew up in a cramped one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Milwaukee, where he learned to hustle by selling candy bars door to door at the age of 10. Over the years, Jordan's unwavering determination and charm propelled him into better circles. First at a local startup, then into his own tech company that caught the eye of an angel investor. By the time he was 35, Jordan was a self-made millionaire, a prominent figure on various entrepreneurial boards, and had connections with people like Mark Cuban, Bill Gates, and a few top executives at Google. His wife, Elizabeth Alberts née Wagner, had been with him through everything. They met in college at a small tech entrepreneur club meeting, both bright-eyed and dreaming of changing the world. Elizabeth came from a modest background, too. Her father was a retired auto mechanic, and her mother a homemaker. She'd studied communications with an emphasis on public relations, and it was through Elizabeth's network of contacts that Jordan first gained access to small local pitch events. While Jordan pitched his innovative software for automating small business tasks, Elizabeth made calls, arranged coffee meetups, and tried to capture the interest of potential backers. They married in a little chapel by Lake Michigan. It wasn't a lavish wedding, no star-studded guest list, no fancy reception at the Ritz. But to Jordan and Elizabeth, it felt perfect. A union built on genuine love, unwavering support, and a shared dream of building a life and a business empire together. Over the next decade, they grew from a modest condominium in Milwaukee to a stunning estate in Austin near Lake Travis, with a sweeping view of the water and rolling Texas hills. It was there at a philanthropic event organized by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that Jordan's name landed on the radar of top-level investors. His company's smart automation technology was recognized for its potential to transform not just small businesses, but large-scale manufacturing and logistics. Soon after, Jordan's net worth skyrocketed from a mere $5 million to well over $200 million. For a while, everything was picture perfect. The marriage was strong, their personal synergy unwavering. Elizabeth handled some philanthropic duties, organizing events, acting as a goodwill ambassador for Jordan's brand, and forging new partnerships through her PR background. Their household staff adored them, describing Elizabeth as kind, gracious, and always mindful of the people around her. But money can be a seductive force, and success can open doors to darker temptations. Jordan began attending more exclusive networking events in Beverly Hills, New York, and beyond. Elizabeth was often at his side, but there were times she couldn't attend. Perhaps she was busy finalizing the details for a charity gala, or maybe she was simply burnt out from the unrelenting schedule. It was during these times, rare at first, then increasingly common, that Jordan got close to someone else. Her name was Ava Monroe. She was a rising star in the world of technology law, representing high-profile clients like Tesla, Amazon, and a few top-tier cryptocurrency exchanges. She had a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations, seductive in social gatherings, and unbelievably charming behind closed doors. The rumor mill started buzzing the moment Ava was seen at Jordan's table during a private dinner after a tech summit in Las Vegas. Elizabeth wasn't there. She had chosen to stay in Austin, meeting with a team of female entrepreneurs Jordan was mentoring. A few people whispered about Jordan's visible fascination with Ava, the way he leaned in whenever she spoke, how they clinked champagne flutes with an intimacy that suggested more than just business talk. No one knew for certain how fast or how deep it went, but soon the signs became undeniable. Lavish gifts appeared on Ava's social media, including a diamond bracelet, suspiciously similar to the ones Jordan's company had once gifted important clients. Photos emerged of Jordan and Ava at high-end restaurants in Manhattan, always carefully angled to obscure Jordan's face, though keen observers could still identify him by the sliver of a recognizable watch or the faint reflection in a mirrored wall. By the time the rumors reached Elizabeth, they were no longer rumors, but near-confirmed facts. She felt her chest tighten, her world spinning out of control. This couldn't be real. Jordan had always been a loyal partner. But the evidence was too compelling to deny. She confronted him in the privacy of their Lakeview mansion. At first, Jordan denied everything. Yet denial quickly turned into a half-hearted admission once Elizabeth presented him with photographic evidence, like a skilled negotiator used to controlling deals. Jordan tried to manipulate the situation, insisting that Ava was just a business associate, someone he occasionally had dinner with. But Elizabeth saw right through it. She had always been adept at reading him. A chill settled over their once loving home. Elizabeth, determined to preserve her dignity, demanded they enter marriage counseling, or at the very least step away from high-profile events until they resolved their issues in private. Jordan nodded, providing non-committal answers. He had never liked therapy, never seen the point in discussing feelings with a stranger. He agreed to her wishes on the surface, yet beneath the facade, he continued his involvement with Ava, allowing the illicit relationship to take root. This was the calm before the storm. For soon Elizabeth's sense of betrayal would pale in comparison to the massive financial and emotional blow about to come her way. Weeks passed. Elizabeth tried to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects, attempting to distract herself from the growing chasm between her and Jordan. When a local charity she sponsored invited her to discuss future donations, Elizabeth discovered something shocking. Her personal credit card was declined. Embarrassment washed over her in front of the unsuspecting staff. She tried another card. Sure, it must have been a glitch, but that too was declined. The staff politely suggested she call her bank, and Elizabeth excused herself with a polite smile, her hands trembling as she left the office. Elizabeth called the bank suspecting fraud or an administrative error. But the bank's representative informed her that both cards had been cancelled the previous week. Under their joint account, they were tied to Jordan's finances, and evidently Jordan had authorized the cancellation. It felt like a punch to the gut. Why on earth would Jordan cancel her cards without her knowledge or consent? They had never had major financial disputes. Elizabeth always had access to family funds, albeit responsibly. She dialed Jordan, but the call went straight to voicemail. She sent him several frantic texts. No response. Later that evening, Jordan came home exuding an air of tired disinterest. Elizabeth confronted him the moment he walked through the door. Under the chandelier's glow, which reflected in her tear-filled eyes, Jordan brushed aside her questions with a dismissive wave. "I needed to consolidate our finances," he said, removing his blazer. "You can use the joint checking account for a while." "No big deal, no big deal." Elizabeth's frustration swelled. "You cancelled my credit cards without even telling me what's going on. Are you punishing me for something?" Jordan's eyes flicked away nervously, and that was when Elizabeth realized he was lying again. The next words that came from his mouth were not only shocking, but also laced with a cruelty she never imagined he was capable of. "Ava suggested we revisit some of my expenses. She found that you were spending frivolously. It made sense to limit credit usage." Elizabeth's heart dropped to her stomach. Ava. That woman was now meddling in their finances. As if the affair wasn't enough, Jordan had allowed this mistress to encroach into an arena that Elizabeth believed was sacred, her own household stability. "What is Ava doing reviewing my spending? Since when does your fling get to decide what is or isn't frivolous?" Elizabeth spat tears, threatening to spill. Jordan made an attempt at a calming gesture, but his words only fanned the flames. "She's helping me restructure. Her firm has great insights into corporate finances. This is about the business, Elizabeth. It's not personal." Not personal. Elizabeth recalled how intimately personal their marriage had always been. They built every aspect of their lives together, from small decisions about wallpaper colors to big entrepreneurial leaps that demanded everything from both of them. Now Jordan was shutting her out, consulting Ava instead. In a quavering voice, Elizabeth demanded, "Reinstate my cards. I am your wife. I have a right to our finances, and you know I've never been irresponsible with money." Jordan's face hardened with a new arrogance. "Not until we finalize our restructure," he said, referring to some nebulous plan Elizabeth knew little about. "I'll handle everything in the meantime." That moment, that cold exchange, was a harbinger of the bigger heartbreak to come. If Jordan was letting Ava control such details, what other aspects of their marriage was he willing to let her sabotage? As the days turned into weeks, Elizabeth discovered one more blow after another. The monthly allowance she used to cover household expenses had been slashed without explanation. The staff, including her personal assistant, was laid off. Bills began piling up, addressed to her name, but with no means to pay them aside from groveling at Jordan's feet. Friends and family started to notice. Elizabeth tried to hide her shame. She confided in her sister Caroline, who was enraged at Jordan. "This is financial abuse," Caroline insisted. "You should speak to a lawyer." Elizabeth shuddered at the thought. She still believed they could salvage their relationship, that Jordan would snap out of whatever daze Ava had put him in. Yet a small part of her whispered that maybe Caroline was right. Then came a fateful meeting at a hotel conference suite in Los Angeles, one that Jordan had insisted Elizabeth attend. It was a gathering of major tech moguls, including Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who were rumored to be there to discuss new tech innovations in global logistics. When Elizabeth arrived, she quickly realized something was off. She saw Jordan in the lounge area, standing far too close to Ava, exchanging hushed conversations. Seeing Elizabeth from a distance, Jordan slipped away discreetly, leaving Ava behind. Elizabeth approached her husband with a forced smile. "I'm here," she said, desperate to maintain composure. "What's the plan?" Jordan gave a curt nod. "There's a closed-door session for the key players only. You'll have to wait outside." In the past, Elizabeth had always been included in these key player sessions, as Jordan's partner and PR advisor. The subtle exclusion burned her pride. She swallowed her anger. "Sure, I can wait." After hours of waiting, she found Jordan and Ava laughing together near the bar. As she approached, Jordan's phone buzzed, and he stepped away. That was when Ava turned a chilling smirk on her face. "You know Jordan's a visionary," Ava said, swirling the wine in her glass. "He needs someone who can keep up with him on all levels: business, ambition, excitement." Elizabeth felt her face flush with anger. "I've been by his side for years. We built this together." Ava gave a theatrical shrug. "Maybe in the past. But times change. People evolve. I guess you were too comfortable." Elizabeth clenched her fists, biting back a retort. She was determined not to make a scene in front of such influential people. But oh, how she wanted to lash out to expose Ava for the home wrecker she was. Ava flicked her hair behind her shoulder, noticing Elizabeth's agitation. "Things will be better if you accept it," she cooed, as if offering advice to a friend. Jordan's moved on in more ways than one. The finances are just the beginning. Elizabeth's body went cold. She realized in that moment how truly precarious her situation was. Ava was not simply a fling. She was positioning herself as a partner in Jordan's professional and personal life. The credit cards were just one step in what looked like a systematic campaign to push Elizabeth out of everything she and Jordan had built. Still, Elizabeth refused to crumble. She left the event quietly, but her mind churned with rage and heartbreak. It was time for her to take action. She needed to protect herself, her assets, and her dignity. Little did she know that as she plotted her next move, Jordan and Ava were preparing a financial ambush that would push her to the brink. Only fate and an unexpected intervention by a certain CEO would alter the course of their twisted game. In the days after the Los Angeles conference, Elizabeth attempted to consult with attorneys. She picked up a referral from a friend who once worked with a high-profile divorce lawyer in New York. The initial phone calls were sobering, with Jordan's empire being primarily under his name and her credit cards cancelled. She had limited liquidity to hire top-tier representation. Even so, Elizabeth pressed forward. She managed to scrape together some funds from a personal savings account. Jordan had no access to money she had set aside from her early PR consulting days. It wasn't a large sum, but enough to secure a preliminary consultation. During that consultation, her lawyer, Michelle Liu, a bright and empathetic but hard-hitting attorney based in Houston, laid out the hard truth. Financial abuse and infidelity are serious grounds for divorce, Michelle said, scanning through Elizabeth's financial statements. But if Jordan's funneling money and assets into new accounts under his own name, or shifting resources to places you can't see, we need proof, and we need it fast. Elizabeth swallowed. She recounted Ava's involvement, how she was effectively orchestrating the restructuring. Michelle's pen scribbled quickly over a notepad. "You have a right to half of the marital assets, Elizabeth, but it looks like your husband is 2 steps ahead. We must move quickly." The plan was to gather evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing and file a court order to freeze marital assets, ensuring Elizabeth had a fair shot. But as they began drafting documents and rummaging through what records, Elizabeth had an avalanche of shocking details surfaced. Jordan wasn't merely cancelling credit cards. He was transferring stocks from their joint portfolio into an account under his newly formed trust. He had changed the authorized signatory details for a few of their properties, effectively locking Elizabeth out. He was also taking out lines of credit against certain properties, presumably to fund new ventures that, as Elizabeth suspected, involved Ava. The emotional strain weighed heavily on Elizabeth. She couldn't sleep, her appetite waned. Each day felt like standing at the center of a storm. Yet if she thought this was the worst of it, she was mistaken. One evening, after finalizing some documents with Michelle, Elizabeth returned to her mansion to find her keycard didn't work on the electronic locks. Pounding on the door, she shouted for the live-in staff if any were left. Seconds later, the door opened slightly, revealing Ava's face. "Jordan's not here," Ava said icily. "You should call next time." Elizabeth's heart hammered. "This is my home. Get out of my way," she demanded, trying to push past. But Ava slid in front of her, refusing to budge. "He told me you're not welcome here anymore until the legal mess is settled." Ava sneered. "I have every right to ask you to leave." Elizabeth was trembling with fury. "You have no rights here. You're the mistress, not the wife." With a cold laugh, Ava stepped aside and pointed at Elizabeth's luggage haphazardly placed in the foyer. "Jordan left these for you," she said. "He said to pack whatever else you need and let security escort you out if you refuse to leave." Elizabeth blinked away tears, her throat raw with outrage. She was being thrown out of her own home by the woman who had intruded into her marriage. That moment was a cruel epiphany. Jordan had not only cut off her finances, but now he was physically pushing her out of the place she had shared with him for years. Yet in all that darkness, a sliver of light emerged the next morning. Elizabeth received a phone call from a close mutual friend, Marcus O'Donnell, who worked with Jordan at a large tech conglomerate in Dallas. Marcus was someone Elizabeth trusted, an executive who had known Jordan since the early days. He had seen them build the company from the ground up. Elizabeth Marcus said, his tone urgent. "I don't know everything that's going on, but I heard from your staff that you've been locked out. There's a board meeting next week. Jordan wants to finalize some big decisions. If you can get to that meeting and talk to the chairman, maybe you can find some leverage." Elizabeth's breath caught in her chest. The chairman of this particular conglomerate was none other than famed CEO David Hartridge, known not just for his visionary leadership, but also for a strict code of ethics. Over the years, Hartridge had invested heavily in Jordan's business. He was the reason Jordan sat on that board. "He's not the type to meddle in personal affairs," Marcus warned. "But if Jordan's pulling stunts that compromise your share in the company, Hartridge might step in. He's big on fairness and hates scandal." It was the glimmer of hope Elizabeth needed. She thanked Marcus profusely. The plan was simple: attend the board meeting, confront Jordan in front of Hartridge, and present enough evidence of Jordan's wrongdoing to ensure the board and possibly the entire conglomerate would not stand for it. She spent the week gathering documents, bank statements, and text message screenshots that implicated Jordan in unscrupulous financial moves. Michelle Liu helped compile everything into a neat folder. "You need to be prepared for Jordan to lash out," Michelle warned. "He'll try to discredit you in front of the board." Elizabeth nodded her determination, overshadowing her fear. She practiced her speech, reciting it in the mirror of her modest hotel room, where she had temporarily moved. Heart pounding, she told herself that if there was ever a time to fight, it was now. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Elizabeth dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that radiated confidence. She walked into the corporate skyscraper in downtown Dallas, her chin held high despite the knot in her stomach. She spotted Jordan in the corridor, flanked by Ava, and a couple of the board members. As soon as he saw Elizabeth, his expression darkened. "You're not supposed to be here," Jordan said, trying to keep his voice low. Elizabeth raised her chin. "I'm still an investor in your company. I hold shares." "So yes, I'm attending the board meeting." Ava stepped in with a condescending smile. "Don't make a scene, Elizabeth. This meeting is for serious stakeholders." "I am a serious stakeholder," Elizabeth retorted, voice steady. "I'm your wife, still legally, and I'm half of this empire's foundation." Behind them, a tall figure approached CEO David Hartridge himself, a man in his 50s with greying temples and a firm handshake. He regarded Elizabeth with polite curiosity. "Ms. Alberts, I presume?" Elizabeth nodded, handing over her invitation papers and a letter from her attorney, which stated that she possessed partial shares. Hartridge studied the documents, then gave a curt nod indicating she was allowed to attend. Jordan shot Elizabeth a glare that spoke volumes. You have no idea what you're getting into. But Elizabeth did. She was here to preserve her dignity, her livelihood, and the legacy she had helped build. The meeting commenced in a sleek conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Dallas skyline. The board members sat around a large mahogany table exchanging pleasantries about the upcoming quarter's projections. Jordan made a short presentation on a new partnership with a logistics firm, highlighting expansions and new contracts. A few board members clapped. Then came time for open discussion. Elizabeth raised her hand, clearing her throat. "I'd like to address some concerns about the financial structuring Jordan is proposing." She began, her voice reverberating across the silent room. Jordan's face reddened. Ava, seated beside him, tried to intervene. "We should keep personal matters out of board discussions," she said. But Elizabeth pressed on, raising the folder of evidence. "These changes aren't just personal," Elizabeth said. "They could affect company stability. Jordan is funneling resources into a new trust making questionable decisions without transparency. I have documents signed by him with references to Ms. Ava Monroe demonstrating a conflict of interest that could potentially compromise investor trust." A hush fell over the room. Hartridge's brow creased. "Jordan, is this true?" Jordan stood, scrambling for composure. "This is a personal matter. Elizabeth is overstepping her bounds." "She's not." Hartridge replied, his voice sharp. "If there's a conflict of interest that threatens the stability of our partnership, it's very much a board matter." Jordan's eyes darted between Hartridge and Elizabeth. For the first time, he seemed cornered, uncertain how to proceed. Ava shot Elizabeth a lethal glare, realizing that Elizabeth's boldness had forced the topic into official territory. The tension was palpable. Elizabeth's heart thumped so loudly, she was certain everyone could hear it. But she stood her ground. Continuing. "I also discovered lines of credit being taken against marital properties to fund expansions. These expansions could be legitimate, but the details are obscured. I have reason to believe Ms. Monroe is manipulating these finances for her personal gain." Murmurs rippled through the board. A couple members exchanged uneasy glances. Even those who might have sided with Jordan seemed rattled by the magnitude of Elizabeth's accusations. Hartridge steepled his fingers, evaluating the situation. "I propose we recess for 15 minutes. Jordan, Elizabeth, Ms. Monroe, please step into my office." Jordan inhaled frustration etched across his features, but he couldn't refuse the CEO's request, not without causing a catastrophic scene. The three followed Hartridge into a glass-walled corner office, shutting the door behind them. In that tense, enclosed space, the real battle began. Elizabeth laid out her evidence on the polished table before Hartridge. Jordan tried to dismiss it all as a personal dispute, but Hartridge was no fool. He could see the potential for scandal, especially if a partner was using company infrastructure for personal vendettas. Throughout this heated exchange, Ava attempted to deflect blame. She portrayed herself as a legal advisor, merely suggesting financial moves disclaiming any wrongdoing. But Elizabeth's carefully compiled documents suggested otherwise. Emails, text messages, and proposed legal documents bore Ava's digital fingerprints. Hartridge's expression darkened. "Jordan, this is unacceptable. If these documents are authentic, you've put your personal entanglements ahead of corporate responsibility. I won't allow it under my leadership." Jordan's face went pale. He tried to protest to label Elizabeth's claims as overblown, but Hartridge had already made up his mind. "Until this is sorted out, Jordan, I'm placing your proposals on hold. We can't move forward with any major financial changes if they're under this sort of ethical cloud." Elizabeth felt a surge of relief, a faint vindication. While she hadn't resolved the core issue of Jordan's betrayal, at least the board wasn't letting him run roughshod over her financial future. But Jordan, cornered and embarrassed, lashed out in desperation. "You can't shut me down like this," he snapped at Hartridge, voice tight with anger. "I'm the one who made that original deal with your conglomerate. You need my innovation." Hartridge stood up, bristling at Jordan's tone. "I'm the CEO, and you've just made me question your reliability and integrity. Watch yourself, Jordan." Ava stepped closer to Jordan, placing a hand on his arm to calm him, but he shrugged her off. "You'll regret this," he warned Hartridge, then turned to Elizabeth. "And you made a fool of me in front of everyone." Elizabeth clenched her fists, refusing to cower. "You did that to yourself," she said, voice trembling with both fear and resolve. Jordan stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ava followed quickly, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Hartridge sighed, looking at Elizabeth, who was holding back tears. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," Hartridge said. "I'm sorry about your personal struggles, but I have to protect the board's interests. If you need anything, contact my office. I'm not a family court judge, but I won't let Jordan drag the company down." With that, Elizabeth let out a shaky breath. She had achieved a small but crucial victory, yet she couldn't shake the nagging sense that Jordan, humiliated and cornered, was far from finished. She left the skyscraper, stepping out into the bright Dallas sun, uncertain, but determined. Little did she know this chapter was only the start of a far more explosive confrontation, one that would involve security teams, sudden betrayals, and a twist that would bring Jordan himself to his knees. Life outside the mansion was lonely, but Elizabeth was thankful for the reprieve from Ava's manipulations. She rented a small apartment near downtown Austin and used what funds she had left to secure her basic needs, while Michelle continued to press for a financial freeze on Jordan's assets. In the weeks following the tense board meeting, Jordan went surprisingly quiet. No more legal letters arrived. No more credit lines were sabotaged. He didn't attempt to contact Elizabeth, nor did Ava. Instead, it seemed as though they had retreated into some silent fortress, likely strategizing their next move. Elizabeth took advantage of the lull. She reconnected with old friends and mentors, explaining partially at least what she was going through. While many were shocked, they offered support in the form of references, moral encouragement, and occasional leads for a stable job or a business partnership. Despite the heartbreak, Elizabeth discovered a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just a passive bystander in Jordan's world. She had her own capabilities, her own strengths. Slowly, she started consulting for small tech firms, using her communications and PR background to help them craft compelling pitches. It wasn't a fortune, but it was honest work that reminded her she could stand on her own 2 feet. Then one evening, she received a phone call from an unknown number. A crisp, professional voice greeted her. "Hello, Elizabeth. This is Patricia Carlson. I'm an executive assistant at Tesla, working under Elon Musk's leadership team." Elizabeth's heart thudded. She had met Patricia briefly at a tech conference in Berlin 2 years ago, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "How can I help you?" Elizabeth asked, mind racing. Patricia hesitated. "I might have information relevant to your predicament with Jordan. Let's just say some of our legal divisions have been observing Ava Monroe for a while, and some red flags have come up." Red flags. Elizabeth's curiosity flared. "You're investigating her?" A slow exhale from the other end. "Our major concern is that she's potentially engaged in insider trading, or at least something that veers close to it. She's been known to manipulate powerful men to gain inside info on deals, especially around new technologies. We don't have direct evidence, but we do know that she's heavily involved in your husband's finances. We suspect she might be siphoning resources for her own agendas." Elizabeth's mind reeled. This was bigger than a domestic spat. Ava might be leveraging Jordan's resources and connections to stake her own claims in the tech world. That explained the sudden shifts in finances, the new trust accounts, and the lines of credit. Patricia continued. "We want to bring her down, but we need more information. You, Elizabeth, might be in a unique position to gather that." Elizabeth tapped her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Isn't that something your legal team handles?" A rueful laugh. "Yes, but we need Jordan's direct involvement. We suspect he's unwittingly giving her access to confidential materials through corporate crossovers or joint ventures. If you can help us prove it, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, protect Tesla's proprietary data, and help you gain leverage in your divorce." Elizabeth considered the offer. It was risky. If Ava was truly up to something illegal, Elizabeth could expose herself to potential backlash, but the lure of finally getting the upper hand was strong. "I'll do what I can," Elizabeth replied cautiously. "But how do I communicate with you about this?" Patricia gave her a secure email address and instructions on how to encrypt files. "And one more thing," Patricia said, before hanging up. "People like Ava are cunning. She'll anticipate your every move. Don't trust phone lines or any device that Jordan has access to. Be careful." Elizabeth thanked her and ended the call. Adrenaline coursing through her. For the next few days, she scoured her digital archives for anything that might hint at insider information. Jordan's old emails messages about collaborations with major tech companies like Tesla or Amazon, documents that Ava might have manipulated anything that showed a trail of questionable activity. She found a few suspicious threads, forwarded emails from Jordan's corporate account that were CC'd to Ava's personal address. Attachments relating to Tesla's Project Next Gen battery were among them, though none of this was strictly proof of wrongdoing yet. Elizabeth compiled what she could and sent them to the secure email Patricia provided. In response, Patricia confirmed that these were valuable leads, but incomplete. "Keep digging," she urged, "and let me know if you get direct evidence of deals or monetary gains tied to these inside details." Meanwhile, Michelle Elizabeth's lawyer was preparing for a preliminary hearing to freeze some of Jordan's assets. She insisted Elizabeth come to court to testify about the financial abuse and the suspicious activities they had uncovered. But Jordan's side surprised them by agreeing to a partial freeze without argument. "That's strange," Michelle said, tapping a pen against the conference table. "Why would he agree so easily?" Elizabeth shrugged, perplexed. Maybe he realizes fighting me will look bad in front of the board. But Michelle wasn't convinced. I suspect he's preparing a bigger move. Be vigilant. He may have more leverage than we know. The next morning, Elizabeth received an unsolicited text from Jordan. We need to talk, face to face. She felt a swirl of conflicting emotions. Anger, sorrow, curiosity. But she knew she had to tread carefully. She agreed to meet him in a public place, a cafe near the courthouse, where she could keep the upper hand. When Jordan arrived, he looked tired, as though the weight of his troubles had worn him down. He offered a half smile, which Elizabeth did not return. Liz? He began using the old nickname he once uttered, with affection. Things got out of hand. She crossed her arms. You think... He sighed, scanning her face for warmth that was no longer there. I want to settle this amicably. We can discuss spousal support, property divisions, everything. No need for a long, nasty court battle. Elizabeth let the silence hover. She wasn't naive enough to believe him at face value. Amicably. Are you telling me Ava is out of the picture? Jordan's shoulders tensed. This is about you and me, not her. Look, maybe I got carried away with Ava's advice. She's a brilliant attorney. She's manipulative, Elizabeth cut in sharply. He brushed the point aside. Regardless, I'm willing to compromise, but I need you to lay off this insider trading nonsense. It's reckless. You're endangering my reputation. Elizabeth realized then that Jordan knew she'd been snooping into his communications. Perhaps Tesla's legal inquiries had begun reverberating in his circle. She saw the fear in his eyes. He was worried, if not about losing her, then about losing his empire. You made me the enemy, Elizabeth replied, in a hushed, trembling tone. When you let your mistress cut off my cards and throw me out of my home. Jordan looked away, shame flickering on his face. I didn't handle that well. But you have to understand the pressure I'm under with these deals. She waited, letting him squirm. Then he continued. You'll get a fair share. I promise. I just need you to stop meddling in my professional affairs, especially with Tesla or any other major collaborators. You'll ruin me if you do. A bitter laugh escaped Elizabeth. She thought of all the times she had stood beside him, protecting him, representing him before powerful players, forging alliances that were crucial to his success. Now he was pleading for her, not to ruin him. The irony nearly choked her. Before she could respond, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and muttered a soft curse. I have to go, he said, throwing some cash on the table for their untouched coffees. Elizabeth watched him leave a mixture of pity and disdain swirling in her stomach. It was obvious he was desperate, but was this a genuine attempt at reconciliation, or a ploy to keep her from uncovering more incriminating information about Ava? That question lingered as she returned to her apartment, drained. However, a new email from Patricia waited in her inbox. It contained an attachment, a partial timeline of suspicious trades linked to accounts rumored to be controlled by Ava Monroe. There were large bets placed on Tesla's stock ahead of public announcements. Gains in the tens of millions. This is huge, Elizabeth thought. If she connected these trades to emails or calls between Jordan and Ava, it could be the smoking gun. And while Elizabeth had no intention of going to the feds on her own, Tesla's legal team could bury Ava, and by extension, Jordan's complicity, if he was involved. Elizabeth clutched her phone, anxiety coursing through her. She was walking a razor's edge. One false step, and Jordan might retaliate more fiercely, or Ava might strike. But a successful strike against Ava could free Elizabeth from this entire ordeal, giving her the leverage to secure a fair divorce settlement, or even land Jordan in deeper trouble, depending on his role. She reached for her phone to text Patricia when it buzzed in her hand. A call from an unknown number again. Tentatively, Elizabeth answered. A man's voice greeted her calm and steady. "Hello, Ms. Alberts. My name is Gregory Shaw. I'm part of CEO David Hartridge's legal counsel. He asked me to follow up regarding the situation with your husband." Elizabeth's heart skipped. Hartridge's legal counsel. "We understand from Mr. Hartridge's conversation with you that there might be unethical or even illegal behavior in play," Gregory continued. "The board is concerned about potential liability if Jordan's personal dealings spill into our corporate structure. We can't risk another scandal. Mr. Hartridge would like to assist you discreetly." Elizabeth exhaled slowly. She was on the cusp of powerful alliances forming against Jordan and Ava, but the more people got involved, the more dangerous it felt. Gregory concluded, "We'll be in touch with your lawyer. If you have any crucial evidence, Mr. Hartridge suggests you keep it secure. He wants to avoid a public meltdown, but he's prepared to do what's necessary to protect the company's interests, and that includes supporting you in your legal disputes, if it comes to that." Hanging up. Elizabeth felt a measure of validation. The cracks in Jordan's seemingly untouchable world were growing. Perhaps justice would prevail. Yet as she prepared to finalize the next round of documents for Michelle, a gnawing worry kept her awake at night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and Jordan, though once gentle and loving, had shown he could be ruthless when threatened. She braced herself for the storm that was surely coming. The next time Elizabeth saw Jordan in person, it wasn't by chance or a carefully arranged meeting. It was at the headquarters of Hartridge's conglomerate in Dallas. A sudden emergency board session had been called to address urgent corporate matters, and Elizabeth, having been notified by Gregory Shaw, arrived prepared. She walked into the reception area, her heart pounding with anticipation. Michelle Liu had insisted on accompanying her, but at the last minute she was called to handle a crucial filing. Elizabeth went alone, relying on the moral support from Gregory and the knowledge that Hartridge wanted the truth on record. Jordan was already inside the boardroom with Ava, who paced like a clad tiger. When Elizabeth entered, they both snapped their heads in her direction. Ava's glare could have sliced glass. Jordan's face was inscrutable, tense, angry, but also tinged with fear. Hartridge arrived moments later, trailed by a few board members and legal advisors. He wasted no time in stating the purpose of the meeting. "Allegations have come to my attention that Ms. Monroe has been engaging in stock trades leveraging proprietary information from Jordan's company and potentially from our own collaborations. We need to clarify the truth. Now." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Ava's jaw clenched. "This is preposterous," she began. "We demand to see your proof." Hartridge nodded to one of his advisors, who distributed printed documents, timelines of suspicious trades, tied to accounts flagged by Tesla's legal team, along with correspondences that Elizabeth and Patricia had pieced together. Jordan snatched a packet from the advisor. His eyes swept over the page's color, draining from his face. Ava's lips thinned, and for a moment Elizabeth could see the faintest flicker of panic in her eyes. Hartridge pinned them with a stern gaze. "Jordan, you've been a valuable partner. I don't want to see your personal life derail your professional standing, but this is bigger than your marriage. Insider trading is a federal crime, and if Ms. Monroe is using your business resources to pull this off, you're implicated." Ava recovered quickly. She placed a hand on Jordan's arm, her voice smooth. This is a misunderstanding, David. Anyone can align stock trades with corporate announcements. It's called speculation. Elizabeth decided enough was enough. She stood. Speculation is one thing, but forwarding private emails, entire business proposals, and preliminary press releases is not speculation. I've seen the messages. You're literally discussing the best times to execute trades based on announcements that hadn't been made public yet. Ava whirled on Elizabeth. You have no legal standing to claim that. You're just a scorned wife trying to sabotage Jordan and me. Elizabeth's blood boiled. We'll let the evidence speak. There are even time-stamped emails from Jordan's corporate account sent to your personal email, Ms. Monroe, discussing upcoming expansions and product launches. Then trades were executed in your name or trusts linked to you within hours. A hush followed. Jordan's hands shook slightly. He seemed torn between denial and guilt. After all, the evidence was damning. If he denied it outright, he'd appear foolish. But if he admitted his involvement, he risked criminal charges and the wrath of the board. Hartridge leaned forward, his voice firm. Jordan, I need answers. Were you aware of these trades? Jordan stared at the table, words refusing to form. Finally, he managed Ava said it was all above board, that it was just normal investing. Ava let out a short laugh, but it sounded hollow. If you want to scapegoat me, Jordan, think carefully, she warned. We made certain deals in your name as well. Your signatures are on plenty of documents. The entire boardroom seemed to hold its breath. Hartridge addressed one of his legal advisors. Have we sent this to the SEC? Not yet, the advisor responded. We wanted to confront them first. Jordan shot to his feet, panic etched on his face. No need to escalate it. We can handle this internally. If I undo the trades, repay any gains, repay tens of millions of dollars, Hartridge asked. And that would just be the tip of the iceberg if the SEC digs deeper. This is out of our hands if they launch a formal investigation. Elizabeth watched Jordan unravel. This was the man who had once been so composed, so unstoppable. Now he was cornered, sweat beading on his forehead. Ava, too, looked like a wild animal backed into a corner, eyes darting around the room. At that moment, a building security guard appeared at the door, knocking softly. Mr. Hartridge, you asked for security on standby, he announced quietly. Thank you, Hartridge replied, his tone like steel. I believe we might need you. Ava's eyes flitted towards the door, then back to Hartridge. She adopted a pleading tone. David, you know me. I've handled legal matters for some of the biggest players in the industry. I would never do anything to jeopardize your trust. Hartridge's face remained stony. I trusted Jordan, not you. And this evidence suggests you're at the center of a major ethical breach. If you don't have a verifiable explanation for each of these trades and how you obtained insider information, I have no choice but to protect the company from liability. Suddenly, Jordan snapped. Fear twisted into anger, and he pointed a trembling finger at Elizabeth. You did this. You ruined everything because you couldn't handle that I moved on. Elizabeth steadied her breathing, preparing to reply. But Hartridge cut in calm yet firm. Don't blame her for your poor decisions. You let your personal affair become a corporate liability. Something in Jordan cracked. He lunged toward Elizabeth as if to grab her documents or her phone, an irrational move likely spurred by desperation. But he never made contact. In a blink, the security guard stepped forward, and intercepted Jordan, gripping his arms. "Stand down, sir," the guard said, voice authoritative. Jordan struggled, but the guard was a solid wall of muscle. Ava shrieked. "Let him go. This is a private matter." Hartridge shook his head, anger coloring his features. "You just attempted to assault someone in my boardroom. Security remove Mr. Alberts from the premises." Jordan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do that. I'm on the board." "Not anymore," Hartridge said grimly. "I can and I will. You're suspended pending an internal investigation. Once that concludes, we'll determine your status. Now go and take Ms. Monroe with you." A second guard stepped in, guiding Ava toward the door as she protested threatening lawsuits and defamation claims. But her words rang hollow, overshadowed by the looming specter of an SEC investigation. Elizabeth stood off to the side, stunned by how quickly it had escalated from a tension-filled meeting to an outright meltdown. As Jordan and Ava were led out, Jordan craned his neck to shout at her, "You'll pay for this, Elizabeth. Don't think you've won." But the threat carried little weight now. In that moment, Elizabeth felt the mixture of triumph and sorrow that comes with toppling a man she once loved. She hadn't wanted to see Jordan destroyed, only to protect herself and the life they had built together. But Jordan's actions and Ava's ambition had forced her hand. Hartridge dismissed the board members, soon after instructing his legal team to cooperate fully with any investigations. He turned to Elizabeth with a sympathetic frown. "I'm sorry you had to endure this, Ms. Alberts. I assure you we'll handle it lawfully. Whatever personal or marital disputes remain, I hope you find closure." Elizabeth gave him a small nod. "Thank you. I appreciate your fairness." She gathered her documents and left the skyscraper, the bright Texas sun striking her face as she stepped onto the street. The entire drama replayed in her mind. "He let his mistress cut off my cards, but the CEO called security on him." She thought, a bitter yet satisfying sense of irony spreading in her chest. She wasn't naive enough to think it was over. Legal battles would continue, depositions would be taken, and the divorce was far from final. But in this pivotal moment, she had taken back her power, standing against the storm that Jordan and Ava had unleashed. And for the first time in months, Elizabeth felt a glimmer of hope that she might in the end be free from their tyranny. In the weeks that followed, word spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up on rumors of insider trading linked to a high-profile tech investor, hinting that a major name was under investigation. It didn't take long for the rumor mill to connect the dots to Jordan Alberts and his mysterious attorney-turned-partner, Ava Monroe. Elizabeth watched from the sidelines, inundated with calls and messages from acquaintances, reporters, and sometimes even old college classmates she hadn't spoken to in years. She ignored most of them, preferring to let the legal process unfold without adding fuel to the media frenzy. Jordan, under immense legal and financial pressure, attempted to strike a deal if Elizabeth agreed to keep quiet and not testify against him or Ava. Regarding insider trading, he would give her a generous divorce settlement. The settlement included alimony, a hefty lump sum, and properties that would secure her financial future. However, Elizabeth refused any agreement that required her to lie or withhold the truth if subpoenaed. Nonetheless, she allowed her lawyer Michelle to work out a fair settlement that didn't involve perjury. Eventually, Jordan capitulated, realizing he had to salvage what he could from the marriage and business meltdown. The final settlement granted Elizabeth a significant portion of the assets, the mansion by Lake Travis, ironically, and a sizable share of Jordan's original tech startup. Meanwhile, Ava disappeared from the public eye, her reputation in tatters. Rumors surfaced that she'd fled the country perhaps to avoid legal repercussions, while others suggested she was hiding out in some luxury villa, waiting for the storm to pass. Either way, her days of meddling in Jordan's finances seemed to be over. Elizabeth didn't celebrate Jordan's downfall. She quietly grieved the end of a marriage that had started in love and partnership, yet she also felt relief and a renewed sense of self. She returned to the Lake Travis mansion, deciding whether to keep it or sell. The sweeping views of the water brought back memories, some of which felt like knives to her heart, others that warmed her soul. She began a new chapter in her life, leveraging her PR skills to start a consultancy focused on helping women entrepreneurs navigate both business and personal challenges. She named it Phoenix Rose Consulting, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. To her surprise, she found more joy in championing other women than she ever did, standing behind Jordan at glitzy galas. She kept in touch with Patricia from Tesla, who occasionally updated her on the ongoing investigations. Whether Jordan faced criminal charges depended on further evidence. But at least for Elizabeth, the immediate threat to her assets and well-being had lifted. David Hartridge reached out, once inviting Elizabeth to a dinner with the board, presumably to mend fences. Elizabeth politely declined. She had no desire to relive the tension of board meetings or navigate corporate politics, where her personal life became public fodder. She was grateful for Hartridge's stance, but preferred to build her future away from the chaos. In moments of solitude, Elizabeth reflected on the entire ordeal. She'd once believed that love, loyalty, and shared ambition could conquer anything. Yet she also realized that unchecked power and ego could corrode even the strongest of bonds. Jordan's betrayal had been a painful lesson, but it set her free to discover her own strengths and a life not tethered to someone else's rising star. Yes, heartbreak lingered, and healing was an ongoing process. But Elizabeth found herself waking each day with a sense of purpose. She'd gather with female founders at local co-working spaces, host workshops on media relations, and offer moral support to those feeling overshadowed by bigger players. Each time she saw a spark of confidence ignite in another woman's eyes, she felt her own sense of wholeness return. In time, Elizabeth would finalize the divorce, sign the deeds, and officially start over. A sense of calm settled within her, like the slow, tranquil waves on Lake Travis at dawn. Her story, the humiliating card cancellations, the public meltdown, the mistress's meddling, would become a cautionary tale, one she shared sparingly, only when it might help others. Despite the scars, Elizabeth refused to let bitterness define her. She chose growth empathy, and a belief that with the right support, anyone can rise from the ashes more formidable than before. Just as Elizabeth thought she had reached stable ground, fate tossed her another curveball. A month after the settlement, Michelle called her urgently. "The feds want to depose you," she said. "They uncovered new evidence Jordan may be involved in deeper crimes, bribery, money laundering. Ava might have orchestrated a network." Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Jordan never mentioned anything like that. "They've found offshore transactions and documents with his signature," Michelle said grimly. 2 days later, Elizabeth sat in a stark federal office, flanked by Michelle and 2 serious agents. They questioned her about Jordan's finances, Ava's role, the card cancellations, and philanthropic events that may have masked backdoor deals. Elizabeth stuck to the facts. She neither speculated nor dramatized. One agent, impressed, said, You've been very helpful, Miss Alberts. This case is significant. She left emotionally drained but relieved. She hadn't been dragged down with Jordan, but the storm wasn't over. Whispers followed. Jordan was hiding at a secluded ranch, dodging the press. Ava had vanished. More subpoenas were issued. An indictment loomed. Elizabeth stayed focused on her consultancy, channeling stress into helping other women navigate business pitfalls. Her story, once painful, became a symbol of warning and strength. Then came the headlines: Jordan Alberts indicted for insider trading, fraud, and obstruction. Ava was named but still missing. The scandal rocked the tech world. Elizabeth issued a single statement. I'm saddened by Jordan's choices. I've cooperated fully with authorities and continue to rebuild my life. Eventually, Jordan pled guilty to a lesser charge, offering a tearful courtroom apology. Elizabeth watched from home, tears in her eyes, not from triumph, but quiet grief for the man she once loved. Still, she understood consequences had to follow actions. That night, beneath the soft moonlight over Lake Travis, Elizabeth allowed herself one last cry for the past that died and the hope still waiting ahead. Life has a way of testing our fortitude when we least expect it. Elizabeth Alberts began this journey as a devoted wife, only to see her world upended by betrayal and financial sabotage. Yet what she lost in illusions, she gained in unbreakable resilience. Standing up to powerful forces and calling out wrongdoing isn't easy, but it's sometimes the only way to protect your dignity and your future.